All right, everybody. I'm so glad to have John Rosenfeld here today. John, do you know that we've known each other since 2010?
Since 2010, yes.
April of 2010. I did the math. So John Rosenfeld, as you guys heard, is, I think, one of the best acting teachers out there. And I know his work intimately, and I know the actors that work with him and all that he's created. So without me telling too much about it, John, can you tell a little bit of the story of your studio so people get a better understanding in case they've never heard your name before?
Wow. You mean like the genesis of the
Sure. Yeah.
studio?
The Genesis. Yeah.
You know, I taught my first class in 1994 while I was in grad school. Uh, you know, then again acted, and then I started teaching in LA at another studio in about 2002,
Hmm.
and then basically, I initially started teaching because it was a great way. I loved teach. I just loved coaching. It helped my acting, and it was a great way to supplement my income during the waiting. And as you all know, like, how do you deal with the waiting in between jobs, in between auditions? And that's what I did, and it was very fulfilling. And then when I started the studio in 2010, you know, I really anticipated it just being a couple of classes. And, because when you're teaching, you truly have no idea how many people you touched, or, what kind of energy was, sent through the universe. And then uh, when I did start it, all of a sudden, a lot of people started reaching out. And then it just became this uh, it felt like this enormous, amazing opportunity to kind of to create something that was a reflection of a world that I would have wanted to exist in coming up. And I never felt I had ever been in that perfect environment that I felt was uh, really in service to my needs.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to create a place that was a reflection of what I would have wanted.
Yeah, and if I can say, like, from an observer on the outside, is the amount of care that you take, even with what class does an actor get placed
Mm.
into. Now, so you started off with what was like 3 or 4 classes in the or 2 or 3, and then now it's how many classes?
Oh God.
Is it like 16? Am I guessing here? Am I doing okay?
I mean, between all of them,
Yeah.
between that and Actor Salon and all that, I'd say it's 20
Oh
some
my God! Wow.
classes. Yeah.
And you have these wonderful disciples, I would, or like not disciples, whatever, like coaches that really understand your methodology, who can share it with other people. And one of the things that I notice is they all carry that same heart of what you just said, is that where you would have liked to have landed, like you create an environment where, like, this is not, so many people hear horror stories about being with an acting teacher who is not kind to them or isn't creating an environment where they can flourish or be more of themselves. And I find that whenever I talk to any actors come to the background of your studio, they have that inside them. So if you were able to, like, describe a little bit about the methodology, or like where if the John Rosenfeld method, right? If there was going to be a book, how would you describe that? Or what would you say it's based around? Or
Um, you were part of the original uh, slogan that we came up with,
yeah, yeah,
which
yeah.
was, cultivate the constitution of a happy working actor.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
I think that umbrella is rather large because it covers a lot of different ideas. Um, when you talk about the teachers that work with me, who I consider, they're partners, uh, they're, I've known most of them a minimum of 10 years.
Yeah.
And they became teachers because they demonstrated exactly what you want to see: a true uh a really connected head and heart,
Hmm. Hmm.
um a I felt just incredibly smart, a comprehensive understanding of what the obstacles are to being good.
Mm. I love the way you say it. What are the obstacles to being good? Because I think that really connects to cultivating the constitution of a happy working act. Because I think when we think of constitution, a lot of times people think of a mission of an acting studio as just book jobs and just nail the audition. And what those languages are not the languages. The constitution is like, how are you taking care of yourself? What's going on in your mind and your heart? Like, that piece of it seems like such an integral part of where your studio, I think, makes a difference compared to others.
Well, I just don't see how you ever can be a really good actor if you don't really understand yourself.
Mm.
And I think that sometimes people, when I went to grad school, there was no discussion of self or the way you processed information. It was just follow these rules and be good.
Uh-huh.
But then if you're not processing that through your own like obstacles and your own awareness of self, then you just keep on getting surprised when things aren't working rather than getting really curious about each wall that you're hitting.
Say all that again. I need you to say that again. Say that again. Because right, here's what I went. Right, I was like, well, John, then how come you came out and you knew what you were doing because you were booking and you figured things out? Do you think that like having a background of self growth or self awareness as a youngster and going to college then or going to your grad school, like you were bringing that so you were interpreting the lessons you were getting differently?
That's a great question. I will say that it was accidental what happened to me. When I was in my first year of graduate school, I had an amazing teacher named Nancy Lane, who, after a month of class, looked at me. She pulled me aside and said, I need you to go see a therapist. And I went, what? Why? It felt like an
Of course,
indictment
you're in
of,
trouble. Go to the
of
principal's office. Right.
yeah, even though my mom is a therapist and my stepfather, to see stepfather, they're all therapists, but it felt like an attack. And I wanted her to explain why.
Mm.
And she wouldn't tell me. Which was, I think, great because she didn't feel like she needed to justify it. She's like,
Mm.
I have a really good eye. I know what you need.
Mm.
And it's not like she was saying to do anything that was unhealthy. She
Right.
wasn't
Yeah.
telling me to go smoke crack. She was
Right.
just
Yeah.
saying, go to a therapist.
Yeah.
And then I just went to this therapist. And after one day, I had all these discoveries. And I went to class that afternoon and I did really good work for the first time, like since I had arrived. And my teacher uh, asked me, what did you do? Like, what did you do that I taught you in this last month that suddenly made sense? And my secret was nothing, but that I had just gone to therapy
Oh.
and it just allowed me to be present and it took away something that I was projecting onto this class. And that became a thing I didn't even tell my teacher. It was my secret little thing
Mm-hmm.
of being like, I'm just going to keep on going to therapy and then going to class. And I found that the two things were going hand in hand. And
Mm.
so I had to go outside of graduate school to get that supplementary work.
Mm-hmm.
And now what I brought in is um, the idea of if you're, as an actor, is about empathy,
Mm-hmm.
right? At the end of the day, it's about empathy. How can I put my feet in the shoes of another human being? And then, but in order to do that, you obviously have to know what shoes you're standing in. And then also thinking about it, to have that empathy, you start to know where those parts of you exist. It's not going outside of yourself. And
Mm.
you know what I mean? It's
Yeah. Yeah.
actually finding where that person exists within you. Look, if more people had empathy, and if everybody took a good acting class, I don't think the world would be the way it is right now.
A good acting class. We got to make
A
sure.
good acting class,
Right.
yeah. But I will say, I think there are certain people where it's like they're like, "Look, I just wanna come into class and I just wanna do the work. I don't want to be psychological. I don't want this to be
Mm.
therapy." I don't want it to be therapy either.
Right.
I want it to be, all acting classes is let's figure out what are the obstacles between you getting where you wanna go.
Mm.
And I think that you can feel, Brian, you know what I'm talking about, when someone walks into a room and they're they've done the work. They're
Mm-hmm.
prepared. They're really with you.
Mm-hmm.
They're not apologizing. They know what story they're telling. You feel that there's an expertise, that there's a sophisticated and comprehensive understanding of themselves and their process.
Right. Yeah.
But then you can also tell one person who just has a good take in them
Mm.
versus someone who's actually having a really strong point of view and a story they're really excited to tell.
Yeah. And when you say that, John, what I just connect to is the difference between playing at something and the difference between creating art. Because what you just described is you're in the art, you're bringing it, and there's playing at something like, and I think this is kind of daring to say, there's some actors might play at being a good actor. I'm going to stay in this little corner because this is a little safer than looking at that thing I can't do. Or when you're in a class and you see an actor who's really struggling, right? Where do you go? I'm not an acting teacher. When I'm coaching someone, I know where to go. When you're into acting, you're like, they're really struggling with this. Where's like, what goes on inside that brain that you can figure out? Like, I know I'm not giving you a great example. I'm giving you really broad strokes here, but can you tell like maybe a story of someone that you saw really, hitting a wall and how you feel like you helped?
I can say that every single one of my teachers Every teacher who's become a teacher has gone through exact that, where they are so frustrated
Mm.
that they're not seeing it, that they're like, "How do you know this?" Or like, "Why?" I mean, I think there's so many different types of examples of what you're saying.
Yeah.
And to them who I see all this talent and all this hunger,
Yeah.
I'll just say, just keep showing up. You'll figure it out, because I think it's the willingness to tolerate confusion.
Mm.
And I think, and you've heard me say this, like, you're only willing to be really confused or bad at something if you love it.
Yes. You have to love something that badly. Yeah.
And you have to love it that badly, because you like, I mean, we get good at things that we should never be good at because we just spend so much time at it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I think, with but what I respected about all my teachers was they did have a fundamental belief that they should understand this stuff and that they should become experts at telling these stories. And I think you need to have that fundamental belief,
Yeah.
but then also have perspective on hitting the wall. But then at the same time, sometimes you'll have an actor who, like, I'm thinking of one right now who just is so programmed to want to get it right.
Mm.
And so,
No
and
one listening to this podcast will ever see themselves in that description at all. No one. What are you talking about? Of course. Yeah.
so they're so they get so cerebral, and you know and then it's about trying to first help them try to help them understand where, like, from a uh a family of origin place,
Yeah.
how is this developed. Let's, like, take a real good inventory that this is not. Don't be shocked that this is happening, because I think sometimes we get shocked by things that have been happening for years, and now
Yeah.
you're just suddenly seeing evidence of it, or it's being pointed out, and it can feel uh shameful when it should not. It's actually a thing. I feel like everybody's habits, what we have to recognize, they've also served them in a
Yeah.
great way, but then eventually it ceases to serve.
Well, also, do actors ever get pissed off? Like, why is this showing up here in acting class? Like, is there ever like a disjunct between I, yeah, I know that about myself, but this is acting class. Like, that's not for here. Like, we don't need to talk about. Do you ever have that kind of pushback or that kind of like um lack of desire to look at it?
Yes.
Or force, like, no way, that can't be about me. That can't be what's happening right here. Like, just a full, nope, that's not what's happening. Like, when that happen, I'm giving you really tough questions here, John. So thanks for
No, no,
sharing
I
them.
think that's good. I had a recent thing of that where they just, that's not what they wanted class to be. And then, but here's the problem. I had one actor recently uh, confide to me, privately, uh, about feeling, not adequate,
Mhm.
like when working on a scene and like in the middle class. And then I tried to address uh, with them. Um, I go, you should bring that up in the moment.
Hmm.
And I go, that should be like, if in order to be moment to moment in a scene, we have to be moment to moment with what's happening in our experience. And then they said, I would never do that. I would never bring that up. And I go, well, then, but the problem is that when I address it, you just go, I'm fine.
Mm,
I'm fine.
mm.
But then everybody in the room can see you're not fine. And so then it's just trying to ignore the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
And then because you're just so in a place of trying to suppress, you're not able to be present in the scene. So it just becomes this domino effect.
And you have multiple bad acting classes where you hate yourself every day. Like, I'm not good enough, and you're not, and it's this little bridge to go across, or this connection
But
point.
but I think it speaks to something you said, Brian, like, what's the philosophy? Like, the philosophy is, look, every acting methodology I believe in. I just think too often what happens is we just have to remember that every acting methodology is a product of what that teacher needed to learn, or
Mm.
what that was for that particular teachers, whether it's Stanislavski or
Hmm.
Meisner or Strasberg or, I mean, all of these people, this worked for them and it worked for
Right.
their brain, and they're all valid. I just think
Right.
now but I think too often what happens is it's like you, Brian, suddenly like taking on a particular, nutrition plan that
Uh-huh.
really doesn't work for your body, but you're like, but it worked for Brad Pitt.
I should keep
You're like,
doing it.
well, yeah,
Yeah, let me just keep doing it and trying all the different ways and making it about there's something wrong with me. There's not wrong with this. And I can
as you're
see it.
getting hives or you're
Yeah.
feeling tired or you're feeling fatigue. And I think too often we're like actors are treating acting like academia, and it's about like executing the methodology rather than just becoming an expert in the way that you're functioning and having a myriad of tools
Yeah.
that are available to you. And I think that means then you really have to allow yourself confusion,
Right.
because
Yeah.
you have to allow to yourself to be like, I don't know what this is. Let's try a few different things that will actually trick my body into being present within these circumstances.
Yeah. What you just said just reminds me of how, you know, you got to have a few bad acting classes. You can't come to acting class every time and be like, I knocked it out of the park. I knocked it out of the park. And I go like, okay, well, maybe that's not the class for you anymore. Like there's got to be space for like, dang, I didn't. Confusion is a part of the journey. The confusion doesn't have to be painful, but I think the confusion can be there. Would you agree with that?
If you're not having a bad acting class ever, then I'm doing something wrong. I mean, like,
And also, wait, full disclosure, we're not saying it needs to be painful or it needs to be you leave
no,
crying. I'm just saying, like, I think you have to like, damn, I couldn't figure that out tonight. That has to happen once in a while.
all I'll ever say is like we've had that in so many different classes where just like I just try to get them to get excited. I go, guys, this is great. We just uncovered material that's really challenging for you, which
Mm.
means we get to focus on this material. We get to dig in. We get to problem solve, and that speaks up. Do you remember? We had actress in the studio, Elizabeth,
Uh-huh.
who came to the studio and was like, I want to quit acting.
Okay.
I want to quit. Do you remember that?
I don't know if I keep going. I probably will.
She was scared. She's like, I just want to quit acting. But you could tell that she didn't really.
Like, why was she there? That's what makes it. Why'd she show up? I'm coming in to let you know I'm going to quit today.
That's a really good point. I think because she clearly had just a bad relationship with acting.
Okay. Uh-huh.
And what it was making her feel. So sometimes that's what people do, like fuck acting, where you're really just saying fuck the way it makes me feel.
Right. Yeah. Ooh, that really cuts. That's a really good one to hear.
You know, and I just saw her, and she's really talented. She was not doing the scene she brought in very well, just because she was bringing in all this animus about just being there, acting.
Right.
And all I said to her is, I go, listen, you may quit acting. I go, I don't believe you really want to. So why don't we just heal your relationship with these last few auditions that you've said were so tortuous?
Mm.
And I say, let's bring them all back, bring them to me. Let's make them good experiences rather than bad experiences.
Yeah.
So she brought in the last 3 auditions that she said went terribly. And with each one, within half an hour, we made them great.
Mm.
And she's
I mean,
like,
was it terrible the first time? Like, did she actually bomb those first? Did she actually done a crap job?
it wasn't crap. It just wasn't the story that was written.
Mhm.
And she didn't know what her point of view was really. It was fine. It was just a little, it would never have gotten her the part.
Got it. Yeah. Yeah.
And it was just a little vanilla. And there were parts that were actually really good for her.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then within half an hour, we made each audition pop. It was great. And she got very excited. And and she just suddenly became like, and she was, I'd say in her early to mid 30s, but she just became this joyous teenager.
Uh-huh.
And then she booked a series on her next legitimate
God.
audition.
Of course.
And I think that just goes to show you that like, this is not, your brain is not something that can just be like bypassed or ignored. And that's why when we say cultivate the constitution of a happy working actor, like we got to figure out what our obstacles are for happiness, if anything, because we can just feel that person who's coming into the room, even when it comes to a self-tape.
Wait, let's talk about self-tapes. So
okay, please.
We haven't had you and I haven't had a big conversation about self-tapes. So the world's there were self-tapes for a while, and now it is the way. It is de rigueur. It's what's happening. What do you notice? What's the biggest thing you notice actors doing that is like, don't, or like, what are you seeing that's working well? What can you share?
One of my clients is a writer on a NBC show, and she's been in class, and she actually texted me in the middle of class. Well, she She texted me and said, by the way, I've been watching a lot of tapes this week. And let me just tell you, the actors we're considering, their tapes, they're really like, they're going all out. The
Ah.
ones we like, they're bringing it.
Uh-huh.
Good lighting, good,
Mm-hmm.
they know what they're doing. They figured out their tech, and they're, I think we're living in a day and age where remember when you got into the room and it was like, Brian, don't bring in your backpack. That looks needy.
Uh-huh.
They're
Uh-huh.
like, oh, or like, only bring in, remember all those rules, only bring in what would be on your person.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You can't have any props. You can't have anything. If you need a phone, you can hold a phone or a water bottle. You're done. That's the actor diet you need to be on for your audition.
You're at
That's,
home.
yeah.
You have a kitchen. You're at home. You have all of this stuff.
Yeah.
So my thing is, luckily our actors are working a lot, but I think that it's also over this pandemic, people have really had to take an inventory of like, okay, they've had time too of like, what's my setup? Because this is
Yeah.
it used to be splintered, like, taping. I don't want to tape. I just love being in the room. And
Yes,
like,
of
well, guess
course.
what? That's not happening.
You can keep loving it, but it's not happening. Yeah.
But if anything, you have to illustrate within 10 seconds, 10 seconds that you fully are understanding the world, the text, you're popping,
Mm-hmm.
you are um, take risks,
Mm.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if anything, the way of taping right now is it's just too easy to go to the next tape,
You mean your
and
next audition, or do you mean like?
no, it's easy for the casting director
Oh,
just to
right.
move
Yeah.
on to the
Yeah.
next person,
Yeah.
because if you're going to phone it in, they're not going to they're going to phone in watching it.
Right. Well, I mean, like, here's where I get the challenger. I know so many actors who will say, "Yeah, but I never phone it in." But there's this other distance that this person who called you is talking about, which is like, are you seeing people like shoot them in their kitchens? Are you seeing people use their things inside of their home? Are you seeing them like go a little bit more in the distance that way, even?
I mean, like I look at like Ryan Garcia, one of our teachers, was up
Yeah.
for something, and he went. It was to play some like punk whatever something, and he went full makeup and all that stuff, and he needed to, because otherwise, if he just would have been Ryan,
Yeah. You wouldn't have seen
with
it.
that, with no, because he's like this, he's a
Handsome,
very
handsome
handsome,
guy. Yeah.
handsome man who you would never see as punk. But then when you
Yeah.
see him with all that stuff, and then the acting's great,
Right.
then he's under consideration.
Yeah. So what I
Uh,
hear you saying is like, what do you need to show that you can fit the story?
yeah, and
Everybody doesn't have to do it in their kitchen, but maybe you, to make this work, you need to be in your kitchen, or you need to be wearing that, or you need to have that proper, that kind of scenario.
I think this is where things get tricky, because now you're also talking about taste,
Yeah.
and I think that's something that gets developed over time. So, for example, if you are someone that feels like, I don't know, is this good? Then you really have to make sure you are surrounding yourself with people that actually you do trust, and that you do feel are maybe perhaps have more experience, or have a more evolved understanding of what's working or what not working.
Mm-hmm.
And I think too often people are like, but I should know. Let's not deal
Come
with what you
on.
should,
Oh,
like,
what you
let's not
should know is such a painful place to keep yourself so tortured and safe.
but but sometimes people are comfortable in that tortured and safe, and you
That's
got to
true.
get them, and that's my job, is to get them, you know uh to get them uncomfortable.
Well, it also reminds me, John, and I'm sure you agree with this, but like an actor would never, I mean, this is not true, but an actor would never take their own headshots, but let's just say that. And because Edge, a photographer, has developed an art for taking great headshots and capturing people, right? That's so much for auditions. Like, why would you think that your own skill alone should be the only thing preparing you for an audition? Like, why are you not talking to a teacher or a coach who's seen a million auditions more than you have, to say, yeah, the edges aren't sharp enough here. I don't see you coming through, that there's someone else there who is and a more advanced, like you're like has developed more taste or seen more. It's almost like 10,000 hours. Like they've just seen more than you have in terms of this. So they have something to say. Do you ever find like when an actor comes to you and they can get resistant to coaching?
I will say, I don't typically get people who are who people come to me, I don't get them to be terribly resistant to coaching. I think, um, I think people come to me just with a certain level of confusion and not knowing how to express or articulate that confusion,
Hmm. Yeah.
and they feel a little just kind of like, I don't have a compass.
Yeah.
And the more I can just say, I witness your experience, I think that this is what you're saying. And then as long as they're feeling seen, because I think sometimes they're, again, comparison is a form of, masochism.
Yeah.
And I think often people don't want it. It's so much easier just to, again, go back to that, like, I will myself, rather than accepting, like, okay, I'm just a little lost right now.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, honestly, isn't that why people initially come to you and I?
Yeah.
Is because they feeling like, I know I need help. I don't know what the help is. And then we just help, piece through it
Yeah.
all.
I always come back to the thought that I steal from recovery, which is your own best thinking got you here.
Yeah.
You need someone else's thinking. Get someone else's
Oh, I
thinking
love
in there.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think, but to speak to the tapes, I think it's like, look, we have to recognize that in this, right now, you have those actors who are always going to be the series regulars coming off series or are normally in the mix. They're always going to get those 4 auditions.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And their tapes are going to be watched, and the people who are not auditioning as much as they are, I promise you, they're going to be envious of those people.
Mm.
Yet, but my actors who are in that category are envious of the people who don't have to audition. So it's like it's always the
Yeah.
grass is always greener.
Right. Right.
And like I like a client who's on a show who's like losing, is always every part she's losing is to Elizabeth Olsen, or it's like it's name after name after
Yeah.
name after name. So they're all trying to figure out, like, how can I make it stand out?
Mm-hmm.
What can I do? What can
Mm.
I, how can I? And so, we're working on it. We just kind of determine, is this going to do that what you want? Is
Yeah.
this tape going to serve that? At least put you back in the running.
Right.
Will you get it? We have no clue.
Does the the question for me that comes up is, does that conversation that you have in that coaching change because you know that about just opportunity for that actor, that like Elizabeth Olsen's tape is going to be right up against yours, versus the actor who might come in with a similar scene who is not competing at that level, I put in quotes if we want to believe in levels. Does the coaching change in that space? How does it inform you, I guess, is the better way to ask that question.
Well, the one thing I will say is that I think that, when I'm coaching those types of roles, I most likely other actors aren't getting an opportunity to audition for those roles. Do you know what I mean? In all likelihood, they're not getting called in for that.
Right.
Because if they're going to cast Elizabeth Olsen, they're probably not going to go for someone that, we haven't
never
heard of before.
Yeah.
We've never heard of before. But I think that the conversation, like, for example, in this pilot season, right?
Yeah, let's talk about pilot season. Everyone's gagging for information, want to know everything.
Well, I think, sometimes you'll get, like, I have a client who's 21. She's with, like, Innovative and the big management company. And she was expressing, worry because she hasn't been getting jobs or callbacks. She just came to us. But I said to her, I go, are you going out for any co-stars or guest stars? She's like, no. So you're only going out for leads of movies and the lead of a series? She's like, yeah. So I'm trying to calm her down, realizing that that's a different game.
Yeah.
You can't gauge it by whether you're booking the job when right now you're 21, you have no credits yet. The reason you're with this amazing team is because you're really good.
Yeah.
You're really good. And now we just have, the only thing we can control right now is that your work, that your tapes are just really freaking good. And you're just trying, all we need you to do. And I said to this is what I asked her. I go, are the same casting directors calling you back in? She's like, yeah, they're all calling me back in. I keep on seeing them. And I go, then we're doing a good
Yeah.
thing.
Money in the
I,
bank. Money in the
I go,
bank, lady.
the problem is if you're going to all these auditions and then you hear nothing from any of these casting directors for a very long time, like you lost them.
Yeah.
That's not happening. And that's really hard because I remember when I came out here, when I came out to LA, and I was never told I was auditioning to make a fan of a casting director. I was told I was auditioning to get the
Get the
job.
dang
And
job. Yeah.
I mean, yeah. And then, listen, I think on top of it, which is pilot season, all this stuff, look, not a single person got into acting, going, one day I'm going to act in front of a Zoom camera. And one day I'm going to get to put myself on tape and read with my roommate. So I think we are dealing with an additional obstacle of people feeling so isolated, which makes it so much more important for them to figure out a way to actually go out and surround themselves with that right kind of like board of governors that are going to help them get out.
Well, I also think what you just said just made me, and I don't think I've ever thought of this before, is when we think about an acting career, even if we're 8 years old, everyone who's alive thinks of going to auditions and going into a room with people. So that's a huge part of the like if you're an actor, that's going to be part of your path, and that path being wiped almost off. We don't see it really rarely. And to say, oh, wait, one of the things that I imagined about the fun or the expression of an acting career was to go into a room and tell a story to people, that is in many ways taken away. So to have to put that into your self-tape is a little bit of a mind fuck.
I think it's a huge mind fuck, but I will say I have noticed that I can't tell you how many actors who've been like literally went with me from in person to over Zoom in March of
We don't talk about it anymore.
2020.
Yeah.
But those who just stayed at it, they have all expressed at one point for a callback or whatever, or a reading, have just said, I am so freaking happy I've been in class during this time because I was so prepared. I was so equipped and I was nervous, but then all of a sudden I'm like, I've literally been doing been doing this every
I put in all
week
my hours on this. I know what this looks like. Yeah.
and wildly aware when people have not been.
Wow.
And they feel like they have a leg up to a certain extent.
Sure. Yeah.
And I keep on noticing that when I get new people like coming in for consultations, people have kind of been like, I'm just not a big Zoom fan or whatever it is.
Be one, become one.
I mean, well, no, and listen, I get it. I have so much empathy for it, but you're witnessing that they're still dealing with things that I wish they would have dealt with 21 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
Of knowing that like you still have to adapt because we know this is not going anywhere. Right. I mean, Brian, 2 years ago, if I were doing a podcast with you, we would have gotten together somewhere.
100%. Yeah. So I want to circle us back just to kind of really zero in on pilot season just a little bit more.
Right.
And can you, because I know people really want to hear what's happening. What are you seeing? Because I know during pilot season, you're really busy. You're seeing a lot of clients. And, this is maybe our first pilot season in 2 years-ish. So I don't even know. What is it? It's early in pilot season, but what does it feel like to you? You're seeing people? Are things starting to come out? What are you noticing?
Yeah, I think, listen, I've been fortunate to work on, to be a set coach for a few different shows right now. And so I talk to the casting directors, and the reality is pilot season is still year round. Mm-hmm. And even a casting director said to me a couple of months ago, they're like, well, pilot season. And I go, is there a pilot season? They're like, oh, I mean, yeah, ish.
Yeah. Wait, can I tell that pisses me off so much? Can I just tell you why that pisses me off? Because because every actor in the world is buying into the lie that, well, during pilot season, this is how I have to be during pilot season. And also agents, and just like you said, casting directors are buying into an idea of something that kind of doesn't exist in the same way anymore. And so collectively, we all just act like we still need to like be different during this time. Are you saying like, we're just seeing numbers? It's year round. It's not like that. Is there a little bit of an uptick?
It's definitely been an uptick. Okay. And, and right now I will say, as far as the, like, who are getting the series regular auditions, it's the familiar crew.
Okay.
It's, you know,
Hmm.
it right now, what always happens during pilot season, we go to the actors that are with industry entertainment. We go to the CAA, we go to the people that are, you know, or been on shows
Hmm.
doing all that, you know. And I typically what we would always say is that not if you're not well known, or
Hmm.
if you're with, you know, again, I don't like to make, you know, a scale of
Sure, sure, sure.
agents,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
if you're not with one of the big people, like your pilot season typically starts at the end of March, right?
Right.
Or you know, and you get involved in when you can't find the people.
Because they've
And I
accepted
think if
other
anything,
pilots, or they turn it down for a different pilot, and all that. Right. Yeah.
right. And all your job right now, and this is the hardest thing, is you just have to be ready.
Yeah.
And you know, we always talk about, just if those people are auditioning all the time, they're being um, forced to stay in shape.
Yeah.
They're being forced to flex those muscles.
Right.
So I would just encourage actors to not sit there and wish their lives were different. I would encourage them to simulate that life of the auditioning actor. Be reading all these pilots. Read the stuff that you actually, and get excited about material that you'd really like to go in for,
Right.
rather than just letting your next audition be the thing that you're excited for.
Yes.
You
Yes.
know, I think the more you get excited about material, that's putting you in a different direction of like, this is what I would love to be in. And then all of a sudden that changes your relationship to the audition that does come in. Like, okay, I'll go out on this,
Right.
but I still would love to be seen for this thing.
Sure.
So I think people, you know, live the life like, you know, you want to live, not necessarily the one, you know, that you're living right now.
Yeah.
And I think if you want to be acting a lot, we got to be acting a lot.
Well, yeah, and what I just got to there is like when we're talking about goal setting and with actor operating system, one of the programs that I run, and we talk about how I'm stealing this from James Clear. He's the guy who wrote Atomic Habits. I'm going to butcher the quote, but it's like, you know, you don't rise to the system. You don't rise to your goals. You fall to the success of your systems, or the success of your habits. And like, if you have to, like, it's not like these fancy actors, I'm going to call them fancy actors, are getting all these great auditions and they're like, and I can just phone it in. Like, they're having to deliver because they're competing against the next fancy actor, and they are at a level. They've been going to the Olympics nonstop. So you suddenly get dropped off at your Olympics at the end of March and you haven't been doing it. Of course, it's not going to compete at the same level. I hate to use the word compete, but it's just not going to perform at the same level.
I think you're speaking to something really important also, which is, um, the main difference that I see between actors that are working all the time and newer people is the people who work all the time, they're just able to actually process material at a much greater pace.
Mm, mm.
So they can typically get those 3 auditions in a week and not necessarily feel the overwhelm. Whereas you might have an actor with much less experience who's so talented, but just doesn't have that skill set yet.
Right.
And that's what we're needing to work on. So sometimes you're getting the opportunity that should be the opportunity you're able to take advantage of, but you just don't yet have that skill set.
Mm,
And
mm.
especially when you're being asked to have that quick turnaround,
Yeah, for sure.
you
Oh
know,
yeah. And I've seen many
so you
actors
end up,
overwhelmed with like, I got a big audition. Oh my God, my life has to stop. And oh my God, like, in that you're like, oh, well, this one's not going to be the one you book. Like, you can just see from the outside.
yeah. And I think, you know, I'm sure you talk about like if auditions are events in your day, you know, we really need to work on that not being the case.
Yeah. Yeah. So listen, I don't want to keep you too much longer. This is such a great conversation. I love talking to you, first of
I
all.
love talking to
And
you.
so thank you. But I want to ask two questions. One
Great.
is, when you've been through some pilot seasons, you've been teaching acting for a while here. What are some, like, what are you excited about for this particular pilot season? Or do you have any predictions around this one?
Predictions about this pilot season.
Or what you're excited about? Either one.
One thing I'm excited about is I think that the writing is getting better and better, and we're being able to see stories that have never been told before.
Awesome.
You know, and I think you know, they're finding all these diverse voices,
Mm-hmm.
and and I know it's, you know, it's a weird shift in the industry, but um, you know, it used to be if you're a writer, you're like, I want to write a feature, I want to write a feature. Now people are like, that's too hard. I want to write in TV. I want to write in TV.
Yeah.
So the these extraordinary writers are coming to television. So, and I also think that because of that and new voices and all of that, I think there is going to be a lot of opportunities for people that have not necessarily had opportunities to at this point. Yeah,
Yeah.
age wise,
Yeah.
youth wise, I just think that there's going to be, um, we're I feel like TV is skewing towards away from some of the traditional, network entertainment, and skewing towards like real. We're going back to like real people.
Mm. Mm.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that you remember what it was like 10 years ago. If you
Yeah.
were a real person, it was like, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And now I feel like we are like, remember when someone like Philip Seymour Hoffman was like an anomaly?
Yes. Yes.
Now I think he's kind of
Normal. I mean, not
nor
normal, but yeah, like that's what we're gonna
no, but
see.
I think we're just like, okay, that guy, like there's such a place
Yeah.
for that brand or whatever.
Right.
So I think if anything, this is a great time. I think you're just going to see some people that I think you're going to see some people book shows that we have not seen book shows
That's
before.
cool. I think what I'm hearing you also say is like TV isn't trying to be aspirational. Like this is trying to be like a commercial. Look how young
Yeah,
and thin you are when you're 50 years old on television versus like let's be real what it looks like. I love that.
I
So
am.
yeah, that is exciting. I think a lot of people would like to hear that. So last question for you.
Mhm.
All the work you've done with actors and taught them, what has it taught you?
What has it taught me? Um, be kind to yourself.
Mm,
I think. I think what you just said about atomic habits.
mm,
Um, you really have to build your foundation on solid ground. You know, don't build it on sand. Don't be on a rush. Don't be in a rush. I've been doing this for 30 years, and I got into it because I loved it. And I got in it with no expectation of it giving me anything back. And I think that if you can just remember to get back to that childlike place of knowing that, look, there's somebody who works at a bank and does community theater in some town and is really happy.
yeah.
And if you can remember, if you can divorce the other stuff, like all these expectations, just remember that the joy it brought you to beginning, that childlike glee, that cops and robbers, it's really going to serve you. And I think I need to constantly check in and go back to, you know, remember that how much joy that it brings me.
Mm,
Um, and I think when you're without that joy, you really have to take an inventory of like what's the core root of that.
yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful. And I just appreciate you saying that, especially as we're on this cusp of pilot season when it's so commercial feeling, right? Like, great, this is great. Now, can you have some fun this time when we go through it? Like, remember how you like to do this again? You figured it all out. Now, can you do it fun? Can you like it? Can you like what you're doing? Right. Yeah. That's a reminder. Even at the highest level, I'm sure you have to give.
Yeah, I look at the end of the day when someone says, "Did you have like how did that feel?" Like Brian, if you're doing a scene and it's like you have to go through an awful experience, I want it to feel awful, but good
Yes.
in the fact that it was an authentic experience. Like
Yeah.
that's what rewarding. I had an authentic experience in something,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that just is a revealing that you have a skill set to be able to do that.
Right.
And that should be a reward. I think that, and also I think at the end of the day, that's when Brian, look, you are so good at what you do. And it took you a lot of years to get to a place where you felt
Like it was the thing.
entitled,
Yeah,
well,
yeah,
entitled to take this place in the industry
totally.
because you knew you had earned it. And when you are walking around with a feeling of like, like I'm not there, look, everyone has a little bit of imposter syndrome.
Sure.
That's just normal.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you get to a place where like, I know I have a voice. I know I have a lot to offer. I know I've put in the work,
Mhm.
and that's a different way, I believe, of walking around the world.
Yes.
I think when you walk around that world, we can feel that. That's palpable. That's formidable. But when you're walking around and actually majority of your thoughts are, I'm not ready, or I haven't actually put in the work, it's really hard to, they say, wait, fake it till you become it, or all
Yeah.
that stuff.
Yeah.
I think that only applies in certain ways.
Yes, totally agree with you. Totally agree with you.
Yeah.
John, I'm sure that a lot of people are listened and would like to know, how do they become part of the studio, or how do they train with you, or how do they study with some of your teachers? What's the best way for them to do that?
Oh, they can go to the website, www.johnrosenfeld.com, and they can schedule a consultation and that's right there on the website, or they can just literally email, call, and if they need a coaching, we have all these wonderful coachings.
Great.
Yeah.
Awesome. And you guys know I'm such a huge fan, and I love the actors that I work with John Studio. So I always can trust that they're getting awesome training and getting awesome coaching. So thank you.
Oh,
And
thank you,
John,
John.
just thank you so much for bringing just all of yourself to this conversation. And I just appreciate everything you had to say today. Thank you so much for being here.
Anytime. Thank you for having me.